We did have a pretty crazy, I'm not actually allowed to talk about it because it's a whole ceremony. You can look it up. But when we crossed the equator, they have a whole ceremony for doing that. Navy tradition. It's basically a hazing fest.
Examples include crawling through garbage or food waste, slop shoots, kissing the royal baby's
the belly of the whale.
kissing the royal baby's belly, a senior sailor covered in grease. Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek, brought to you by Element. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to my right is...
I am Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chaunce.
July 7th. What'd you do for the holiday weekend?
I don't think I'm doing anything.
Yeah, right. I don't believe it.
It's Garrett's bachelor party, and we live with his best man, and I think I'm on watch the dog duty for me and his dog. Not Garrett's dog, but the best man's dog.
Yeah. Seems pretty low maintenance.
Yeah, so I'll probably just be sitting at home.
Take him camping. Although, 4th of July camping.
Yeah, that is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay home.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What have you done?
What have I done? What have I done? I don't know what I've done. Also, maybe nothing.
Wow, look at us.
Yeah. Something, probably hot dogs and beer to some capacity.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and Leo has watched fireworks, that much I know. Assuming fireworks are happening, which are probably not. Anyways,
you think they canceled 4th of July fireworks?
They often do, if it's dry. Fire hazard.
They just meant in general.
No, just a Colorado, Western United States apocalyptic thing.
Never, ever thought of that. I've never known that they canceled them. I mean, it makes total sense, but we don't cancel them on the East Coast.
No. No, you don't.
Okay.
A few reminders before we get to today's interview is, first and foremost, this one's super easy. Honestly, it should not take you more than 45 seconds. I think it's 5 or 6 questions. But in order for us to find the best partners for this podcast, we have a short listener survey. Ask a couple questions about who you are. It can be anonymous. There's the option to input your email or not. But if you would do us a kindness and fill that out, that is truly helpful. And again, gives us better partners for the podcast.
Mm-hmm. And if you want codes, discount codes, that helps, right? Because if you tell us the stuff you like, then we're more likely to get them on as sponsors and give you discount codes for them.
Maybe loosely.
What do you mean?
This is just a demographic survey, basically.
Oh, I thought you were saying for what kind of ads they want.
No.
We should do one of those too.
Yeah.
Okay. Be on the lookout.
Yeah.
But do this one too.
Yeah.
I'm going to shut up now.
Next is, we are about a month away from PCT Trail Days. I know we've plugged this quite a bit, but it's hard for people to pitch themselves with the uncertainty of how the trail goes. But if it looks like you're shaping up to be at PCT Trail Days and think you would be a good guest or know someone who would be, definitely let us know. Would love to chat with you. As of the recording of this one, we still have an empty roster for that. So, good shot.
Don't tell them that. We've
We're
got
also recording
so many
way in advance.
really good potential people that want to do it, but you might outshine them all.
Yeah. I mean, it'll end up being competitive no matter what, but
yeah.
I just want to encourage people to apply. So,
yeah,
apply.
You should.
Lastly, but not leastly, if you enjoy this podcast and you want to support your favorite Cinnamon Connection and get this podcast completely advertisement free, head on over to patreon.com/backpackerradio. You can get in on the fun for as little as $5 per month. Many months, that's $1 per episode. That's nothing. And it goes a long ways to funding fun stuff in the studio, like a spinny wheel where we drink beer, although the beer's free. So shout out to Four Noses. Thank you for this delicious beer.
Little Conifers.
I haven't had a chance to taste it yet. Is it good?
I don't know. You opened it. It looks like it's got Bob Ross on it.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
But yes, an easy way to support your crew here at Backpacker Radio, patreon.com/Backpacker Radio. Again, you get the episodes advertisement free. And with that said, let's get right to today's interview with none other than Leah Twig Harman, who's been on a thru-hiking streak, hiking at least one, but usually several long-distance trails every year since 2017. These include the Triple Crown Trails, Te Aurora. I'm going to add this to my Triple Crown in a past episode. Great Enchantment Trail, Pacific Northwest Trail, Oregon Coast Trail, and many others. Most recently, she completed an 800-mile Desert Winter Thru-Hike from Tucson to San Diego, connecting the Arizona Trail to the PCT. Twig, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start. I've never started like this before, but we're going to do it because shout out to Rachel for flagging this one. But she did a deep dive into your Instagram and pulled up a caption, which made us all kind of chuckle. But it's a photo of a couple of donkeys. You know where I'm going with this one?
CDT Trail Days? No. Oh, the burro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this.
Burros.
Yeah. Burros will make America great again. As I walk through the hills on these fantastic burro trails, I had an epiphany, since it seems like there will no longer be federal employees to maintain trails in national parks, BLM, and Forest Service lands. Assuming all these public lands are soon sold off to the highest bidder as well, perhaps we could relocate some of these burros to build and maintain trails. They would work for free and maybe even perform some other federal service employee tasks. Sure, they'd probably be terrible at maintaining facilities, removing trash, directing traffic, collecting entrance fees, and providing critical visitor information. Public safety and search and rescue efforts would also be severely strained, especially when visitors started getting lost in their maze of trails, lacking any sort of guidance from a real human ranger. The burros might actually bite and kick visitors, which would be bad. But as an entitled American who only cares about the things I perceive to directly impact me, I would be most happy with the burro trail maintenance program. I would also have experience in deciphering which is the right trail of their nexus to choose from. I think this is such a great idea that I'm going to present it to the evil lord of Nazis, acronym ELON. I will call my plan the Replacing Competent Workers with Asses program, REQUAP. I know this doesn't make for the greatest acronym, so I still need to polish it up a bit. Maybe followers can make some suggestions. Asses being the key word here that has to make the final cut. I'm sure the program will be a winner since it falls so perfectly with other U.S. government strategies at the moment. I may even get the awesome Super Saver Ass Award for my savvy suggestion. Yes, that got a good chuckle out of us.
Oh, good. I wasn't expecting to go full political here.
Yeah, it's a unique introduction, but yeah, I guess let's just start with your overall feel on the state of public lands.
Oh, I'm very concerned. Yeah. On my last trip across many wilderness areas, which were only recently designated in the 1980s, it really brought to light just how imperiled some of these areas may be in terms of opening them up for mining and other, uses, putting out God knows what are they going to do, put some servers out there for mining Bitcoin or something. I have no idea, but it's these areas are, I guess in most eyes they'd be considered underutilized, but there is value and benefit to them just existing as they are. The desert is a very unique ecosystem, as I found out, and it was really amazing to be out there in the wilderness, just completely isolated from society and being able to look around for 100 miles in all directions and not even seeing any trace of man. So this journey across the Sonoran and Mojave deserts really was unique in that it was almost entirely through desert wilderness, and in the backdrop with the things going on with the government, it just really got me riled up to think about some of the things, because I also passed many man-made projects like the LA Aqueduct. There's the LA Aqueduct and LA Waterworks projects that are pumping all these millions of gallons of water from the Colorado River, and the route also follows several canals that are part of the Arizona, water project. So you get to see both the wilderness and the impacts of humans on the desert. And the desert shows every scar that's ever been, everything that's ever happened to it over the history of the last couple hundred years. You can see front and center. So I also passed a lot of mining activity that was like from probably the 1800s, early 1900s. That's all still present. You can climb down into any of these mines if you choose to. So there's still a lot of impact from that, and then even the burros are an example of like what we've brought to the ecosystem. They're not natural, but interesting enough, the BLM is charged with protecting them. So I wonder if that's going to last for much longer. But they are an introduced species, but they are also protected under historical preservation acts, which is an interesting combination. So, yeah, I don't, it was definitely, I've hiked in mountain ecosystems and along, the PCT, there are quite a few wilderness systems and different, on the CDT as well. But I think this was probably the biggest collection of wilderness areas that I've hiked through on a through hike so far.
Yeah.
I will say the burros in the photo are very cute.
They are cute.
That was my first thought looking at them, was, ooh.
Yeah. They are also kind of territorial, I found out. I've had the distinction of being charged by cows, but this was a new one. I got charged by one of the burros. And I was approaching the Bill Williams River, where they really are heavily centered around wherever there's water. And I read later that the males or the jacks will protect water sources, and that's how they kind of like keep their ladies around, the jennies as they call them. So he had his little herd of jennies and he had his water source there, and I was walking down the wash towards the river and I had my umbrella up as well, which I already know for a fact that horses really hate my umbrella, and I had it like slanted forward to reflect the sun in my face, keep it out of my face. And so I think all the burro saw was this like giant silver umbrella coming at it, and he had no idea what that was. And so I just started here, and I was looking down at my feet as usual because I was walking in the wash with the rocks and sand, and I just heard the braying, and I looked up and he was like coming straight at me, like full charge.
The umbrella is like a matador trigger.
Yeah, it really triggered him. I mean, it triggers horses too. So, but horses will run and burros actually stand their ground.
Wow. How close did it get?
Oh, he was pretty far away. And as soon as he saw my face, and we made eye contact, he stopped and just like snorted a bunch of times. And then he kind of just like moved off with his little herd of. So it was funny.
Is there best conventional wisdom for what to do in the scenario you're being charged by a burro? I haven't heard that one before.
I just stood there and made eye contact. Yeah. With the cows before, I just had to just stand my ground, and I went so far as having to put my poles out in front of me, directed towards them, and there was a cow that came straight up to the tip of my pole before it finally stopped and turned around. But the burro was way far away still, a good 50 yards or so. Yeah. But yeah, he was mad. Yeah. But the other ones I encountered just kind of eyed me and then slowly moved off. And I actually crept up on one day. It was sleeping and I got pretty close to him. This was before the other one had charged me, so I didn't really think of them as being dangerous at the time. So I definitely scared that poor burro because I finally started making some noise and he was like, huh? And he woke up. Yeah. But I grew up around horses and I rode horses growing up, so I'm not too afraid of large domestic animals generally, but these are still wild. I've encountered wild horses, and sometimes the cows are pretty wild too, apparently. So, it was a little intimidating, but they're not very big. If you go to some of the areas I was driving around Parker, and people driving by actually feed the burros. You can feed them right out of your hand, but they're kind of like the Grayson Highland ponies. They'll come right up to you if they've been habituated. Yeah. But
I Googled it. Google says back away slowly. Mm-hmm. Don't turn your back or run. Mm-hmm. This can trigger a further charge. Maintain eye contact. Donkeys are more likely to be deterred by someone who makes eye contact and appears calm and controlled. Create a barrier. If possible, find a way to position something between you and the burro, like a tree, fence, or even another donkey. Avoid sudden movements. Stay calm. If necessary, use a distraction, and make sure the burro has an escape route.
Fun facts.
Advice.
The more you know.
Yeah, now we know.
Okay, I obviously want to talk about your origin story getting into the outdoors. But before we do that, you've had a really interesting professional background, or your life before backpacking.
Yeah.
Where do we start there?
I would just summarize it by saying I guess I'm kind of a modern day nomad, and I started out really, my dad was like pushing me towards, since I grew up in Colorado, my dad was pushing me towards trying to go to the Air Force Academy, and I wasn't really into that. He wanted me to be a pilot and all this other thing, and I kind of found my own path in going to the Coast Guard Academy and having a background in working on ships. And I didn't find a perfect fit in the Coast Guard either. I wanted to be involved in biology and research science, and so I finished my bachelor's at University of North Carolina in marine biology, and then I found a nice career path with NOAA, and also specifically in the NOAA Corps. So that was a uniformed service that I joined and served as an officer on NOAA ships for a time period. And I also served at one of the National Marine Fisheries Service offices in Miami. That's what brought me to Miami originally. And I was basically counting reef fish in the Florida Keys as part of one of my duties there. And I also oversaw the marine operations, like with the small boats and making sure those were running. Years later, I got essentially the same position across the street at the University of Miami. I was the small boat coordinator and working with the Marine Operations Division. I was just making sure that the researchers that were going out to study the coral reefs and fish and whatever else they were doing for projects there, that they had reliable, safe platforms to work off of. So my passion was with biology and, doing actual science, but I kind of pivoted into being in a role of being more of a technician, and with the background with small boats, and being I got my Coast Guard license to work on ships as well as a mate. So I had some interesting experiences traveling around the world on ships. Got to go to, like all over the Pacific, American Samoa, Guam, Saipan. And then I did a trip as the third mate on a research vessel out of Monterey, California, and we took it all the way down to the Antarctic. So got to see some penguins down there. So I think I just really love traveling for work. And being at sea, I got to wake up in a different place every single day, almost. So I think that fit well with my my nomadic lifestyle, which has now transitioned into waking up in a different spot every day on the trail. I just really love travel and seeing the world. So
yeah, how many days would you estimate, or nights would you estimate, that you've spent on a boat?
I estimated one time it was probably the total amount of time at sea was around 3 years that I spent.
Damn.
Yeah.
With 3 years at sea, there's got to be some wild stories. Like some crazy stuff has got to have gone down.
Yeah. I've been on a ship where we had to run from a typhoon. We had been out partying in Saipan overnight, and a typhoon literally formed overnight, and the port was closing the next morning, and we had to round everybody up, get them back on the ship, and take off before by 10 a.m. that next morning. And everybody was so hungover, and we ended up leaving 2 crew members on shore because we couldn't find them. One guy was in jail.
What's the story that landed him in jail?
Oh, I drinking a lot. Okay. I worked on ships. Sailors are an interesting breed, that they can, we basically binge drink when we get into port. I mean, I say we, but those days are long past me, but long behind me, thank God. But no, I saw some crazy partying for the brief amounts of time we'd be in a port. And
What's the craziest thing you've seen someone do partying at a port?
Well, I just saw people getting passed out drunk, and Saipan has some there's a lot of interesting massage parlors. There's there were strip clubs. There's all sorts of pretty not so nice stuff going on. I went to my first and only strip club in Guam, I believe. Not my thing, but
Yeah.
I was just going with my friends and didn't really care for that. But it was an interesting lifestyle. Just people, drinking a lot. It's not really that different from
does the
trail days.
Right. Does the lifestyle of sailing attract people who tend toward degeneracy, or is it the lifestyle of being on a boat just gives you cabin fever and you feel like you have to let loose once you get to...
Both. We had some alcoholics on the ship for sure, and the drinking continued probably on the ship, but it was a government research ship, so I wasn't, as an officer, I was kind of like not privy to a lot of the knowledge about what was going on behind the scenes, but I'm sure there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I was definitely more upstanding. I never partook of any shenanigans while we were underway. In fact, like, it was my job to oversee that wasn't happening. And Did you
ever look the other way when it was happening?
Well, okay, I can say, like, we did have a pretty crazy, I'm not actually allowed to talk about it because it's a whole ceremony. You can look it up. But when we crossed the equator, they have a whole ceremony for doing that, Navy tradition. But we went all out on that. It's basically a hazing fest. So I can't tell you all the little specifics of what go on because I am a shellback now, and I can't talk to wogs about that. Wogs are anybody that's not crossed the equator on a ship, and they're not allowed to know about the specifics of what it takes to become a shellback, but there's some crazy stuff that happens.
So a shellback is someone who has crossed the equator on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
Any ship, like a Carnival cruise?
Technically you have to have gone through the ceremony. So I doubt, because of the hazing that's involved, that a Carnival cruise would do the ceremony. But yeah, there's like, it's just like special. It's all mired in like Navy tradition.
This is like a fraternity hazing. It sounds like.
Yeah, there's one particular thing that you have to go through the belly of the whale.
Google that.
So I'm sure somebody shared that information.
Sure. Let's see, where do I start? The ship may broadcast that is nearing the equator and preparations for the initiation begins. Roles assigned. Seasoned sailors, shellbacks, assume exaggerated roles. Neptune, his court, including Davy Jones, the royal barber, and the royal baby, and perform mock trials. The ceremony. Costumes and theater. The ceremony is theatrical and elaborate. Participants often dress up in wild costumes. Polywag trials. Polywags are judged by King Neptune and undergo playful, sometimes intense tasks. Examples include crawling through garbage or food waste, slop shoots, kissing the royal baby's
the belly of the whale.
Kissing the royal baby's belly, a senior sailor covered in grease, being sprayed with water or enduring harmless hazing activities. Torture or hazing, historically it included physical punishments or humiliation, but modern versions have been toned down or reformed to comply with the regulations. Boring. Yada yada yada.
So we were all allowed one beer in the official celebration, once everybody had graduated to becoming a shellback.
Yeah.
We all got to have a celebratory beer.
What's the one where it says dressed the baby in a diaper and smothered his belly in lard? The polywags then were required to crawl on their hands and knees to the royal baby and eat a maraschino cherry out of his belly button.
Yes, I did that.
You did that?
Damn, this is like being in a frat on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is. I knew that sailors got after it. Like, obviously, there's that stereotype, but I guess I had no idea the extent of it. That's fun.
Well, given that Noah is probably going to cease to exist, it's probably okay to tell you some of these stories now, because I'm not like giving away any government secrets or anything here anymore. But yeah, another reason I'm a little bitter about what's going on with the current politics and administration is that. No, I worked for a lot of these federal agencies in my career, and I really value what they do and have a lot of insight into the important programs that they're involved in. And as a thru hiker, I've met so many people that work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Forest Service, Park Service, and so many of those my friends have lost their jobs, and it's really terrible.
Yeah.
And, especially almost a lot of the people I know in NOAA and the NOAA Corps have either lost their jobs or under threat now. So I guess it's a good thing I quit and am just being a bum on the trail now, but because I probably would have lost my job.
Yeah.
But we had good times. Those ships, we did really great work. That first ship that I worked on was based in Hawaii, and I had flown all the way to American Samoa to meet the ship because they were down there performing their duties down there. And so I had to ride the ship back to Hawaii, and that's when I crossed the date line. I crossed the equator. We also crossed the date line on the way to Guam, so we kind of had a little bit of a ceremony for that, but we didn't go all out. But this ceremony was 2 weeks in the making. We went through the beginnings of the hazing experience at least 2 weeks beforehand.
Yeah. When you cross the date line, are you going forward or backward?
What is it? I think we jumped a day forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't it depend on which way you cross?
That's what I'm asking.
Oh, we crossed it both ways.
Okay.
So we were going towards Guam, and on the way to we did like 3 months over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then coming back, we lost a day, I guess.
Yeah.
Or no, we gained a day. Yeah, that's right. So if you fly to New Zealand, you lose a day.
Yeah.
And if you cross the date line going towards Guam, you lose a day because you jump a whole day forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know there's jet lag. Is there boat lag, or you're moving too slowly for...
Moving too slowly.
Yeah, okay.
That's what's kind of interesting. The parallel between the ship and through hiking is actually I can walk about the same pace as the ship was moving.
Huh.
We went 10 knots
maximum.
So.
Do you recall the wildest storm you were ever in out at sea?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we got pretty much our butts handed to us on the ship I took down to Antarctica. Not on the Drake Passage, which is quite notorious. We timed that one pretty well, but just off the coast of Chile, we were just getting smacked, and it's hard to sleep when you're rolling around like that. So there's been times when I had to like tie myself into my bunk.
Oh, Jesus.
We were bringing the NOAA ship back from dry dock in Bellingham during the winter. It was like January.
Are you still able to sleep when you're tied into, like, if it's so vicious that you need to be tied into your bed, are you able to maintain sleep?
Not very well. Yeah. He's just getting like rolled around.
Yeah.
Are you not like worried that you're going to end up at the bottom of the ocean and the ship's going to just tip over? And
yeah, I mean, well, I was especially nervous about working down around the ice in Antarctica, being on watch. I'm the sole. When I was on watch up on the bridge, I was usually about the only person up there. I had a lookout some of the time, but they had to do rounds down below, so a lot of the time I was the only one up there. And you've got the life of the whole crew in your hands. And in Antarctica, there was icebergs around everywhere, and there were nights where it was like blowing 40 knots, and I was literally just trying to hold the ship in position into the wind and dodge these little icebergs that were coming at me, like it was like that video game Asteroids. And like
Titanic?
But there was just like icebergs like coming like the size of a Volkswagen bus, but you can't see them very well. Like I could barely see them on the radar, and I had my watchstander just like panning back and forth with a spotlight looking for to see them at the last minute to kind of just move the ship enough to like dodge them, because the wind was like blowing them so fast at me. That's all I could do, is just like hold the ship's nose into the bow into the wind and just kind of like steer around all the ice that was coming at me.
I
spent 4 hours doing that one night.
Jesus. Do ships the size that you were on ever go down?
Oh, yeah. Well, this ship I was on wasn't an ice strengthened hull. It was just like a regular ship. And like most of the ones that work in Antarctica have like a reinforced hull, or they're actually like a real icebreaker. So they have much thicker steel hulls, or they have voids between one layer of the hull and another in case there was a puncture. This ship I was on had like no special features to be in the Antarctic. And so yeah, it was stressful because like even just a small iceberg the size of this table could punch a hole in the...
I feel like she's like at the start of the second VHS of the Titanic.
Yeah, right.
Where that guy's just like standing there looking out and it's all calm and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a lot of responsibility being on watch, and most of the time it wasn't that. It's like I said driving a ship was like the most boring thing, punctuated by brief moments of terror. Like
I couldn't imagine a scarier way to die than like out in the vast ocean in a crazy storm. Like that has to be the scariest way to go.
Yeah, that same trip on the way, this was off the coast of Peru. I almost hit a sailboat that had no lights on it, and I was just doing what I was trained to do, looking out the window. I was on my night watch. I worked from midnight to 4 and then noon to 4 every day. So 4 hours on, 8 hours off. And then usually the mid-watch was very quiet, but that particular night, it was pretty windy. It was probably 25 to 30 knots, and there was like 6 foot to 8 foot seas. We were bouncing around, and the radar doesn't pick up small things when there's that much sea clutter. And the moon there was maybe a quarter or half moon out, and that was all that I had. That I saw this little white thing come over the swell, and I thought it was just a wave cresting, and then I looked closer, and then I realized it was like an actual boat, little tiny 20 foot sailboat. I have no idea what I was doing out there. It had no lights. It looked like it was adrift. It could have just been a derelict boat. Sailboats notoriously don't show up very well on radar either. So I just like ran back to the helm, put it hard over. Your first thing is to always brake right. So I just put the helm over, and I actually had the ship turning, and then ran out to the bridge wing and saw the little sailboat go right down my port side. And that was all the more time I had to react to it. So I was just really glad nothing happened. And I ran down after that to go tell the captain and ask if he thought we should go back to check on this sailboat and see if anybody was on board, because I also thought I saw like a sea anchor coming off of it. So I didn't know if somebody was just like asleep or... but there were a lot of little boats off the coast of Peru. We encountered a lot of little tiny fishing boats that all had their lights turned off as well. So they could have been using it as a little fishing boat too. So it was just, I wasn't really experienced with a lot of like international travel on the ships. I mean, we had gone across the oceans. Like I've been across multiple oceans, but I'd never like sailed internationally along the coast of different countries. So,
do you have really good eyesight? Like, do you have to have really good eyesight to do your job?
At the time, it was before I had LASIK, so I actually was wearing contacts at that time. So, you don't. I mean, yeah, you should.
Yeah, because I feel like seeing icebergs is hard.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And little tiny boats.
Yeah. No, it was I had this really great mentor on my first NOAA ship, and her advice to me. Can I swear?
Yes.
Her best advice was, you have all these instruments and technology available to you, but her best advice was always look out the fucking window. So, and that's what I was doing that night when the little sailboat came up. And even at night, like, what can you even see? Like, you would think the radar would be better for that, but it was only because I was looking out the window that I saw the little boat. So.
If it's in the middle of the night and it's opposite of full moon, so there's like no moon or a new moon, whichever one's the darkest moon, Is it just pitch black out there? Like, is it dark on dark on dark?
Yeah, it's pretty dark, yeah. I mean, it's just like you've seen it out there when you're through hiking and there's no moon out. It's just...
Yeah, but there's like land and mountain features and things that make shapes. You're just in open water.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. You can see like the waves breaking and stuff like that. I have another sea story about a ship. We had to go rescue the crew off of this little Hawaiian island. It's in Pearl and Hermes Atoll, and there's these little sand spits, and that's about all there is out there, and a lot of reef. And this ship that was doing cleanup, they were picking nets off of the reef out there. It was a program funded by NOAA, and that ship ran aground because the mate wasn't paying attention that night. And I always question that because we worked around those atolls all the time. And at night, even on a dark night, you would see a line of waves breaking, which signified where the atoll was and, you know, where the reef was. And so, I mean, she definitely wasn't looking out the window, or she wasn't looking at the radar either, because it's like, it shows up as a clear line on the radar, even though it's like I said, it's just reef, but it will show up as like almost like a feature, like a land feature or shore. But yeah, even on a dark night, you can see the waves breaking. So.
Are you tracking the fella sailing around the world with his cat?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Never mind.
Somebody's always traveling around the world in a sailboat.
Yeah.
That's daunting to me because I've been out at sea on bigger ships. So the smallest boats I ever worked on were like 45 feet. And I worked as an observer on fishing vessels. That's a whole nother story. And I was collecting data on these little tiny fishing boats relative to the bigger ships I worked on. So that was I got a lot of interesting stories from that one. Working on ships predominantly where, you know, people didn't speak English, or we ate a lot of interesting food, and I lived off of rice and tuna for weeks at a time. So
Freshly caught?
Yes, at least.
That's nice.
It's way different than hiker tuna.
Totally.
I ate a lot of tuna.
Yeah. All right, before we get into the hiking, as a marine biologist, do you have like a fun marine animal fact that you can enlighten us with?
Oh, yeah. Fish stories? Gosh, this caught me off guard on that one. Let me think about it.
Yeah,
can I get back to it?
Yeah, 100%.
I can ask a variation. What do you think the coolest marine animal is?
Well, I'm pretty partial to like deep sea fish, or like some of the weird fish we used to catch. I really like this one fish. It was called an opa, or a moonfish, and we used to catch them on the longliner. And it's a really beautiful, like kind of shaped like a mola, like all slender. You can look it up, and they have really beautiful like orange with like a speckled pattern. But there's so many beautiful fish out there, but this was a very odd fish we used to catch. And they're pretty amazing to eat too. They have really delicious white meat. You can actually used to be able to get them in certain restaurants in Hawaii, because the fishing boats I worked on would keep them and sell them at the fish market. But there's so many fish. I mean, that one just comes to mind because I named a kayak after it one time. I had my kayak that was called the Opa.
Okay, I've got one more, and then we can go to hiking. If there was any marine animal that you did not want to bump into, which one are you steering clear of? And why?
Well, I guess like it immediately comes to mind some of the sharks that I saw that we would catch as well, and these are like pelagic sharks.
What does that mean?
There's sharks that are more coastal, like great whites and bull sharks, and then there's these oceanic middle, like way far offshore sharks that people don't normally encounter, and when they have encountered them, they've found them to be quite vicious. So like some of the like ships that went down in World War II, there was like a story about one of those ships that thousands of people ended up in the water, and a lot of them were eaten by these sharks.
What?
And, like, so oceanic white-tip shark, was the one? I think that was one that was like pretty vicious.
White tip shark, silver tip shark.
Well, there's a lot of white tip sharks. I think it was like a oceanic white tip. We used to catch different ones we caught a lot of sharks on the fishing boats I was on. And so there was one particular boat that didn't have a bathroom, and I used to have to go hang my butt over the side. And it was always in the back of my mind. If I fell overboard, that was kind of like it, because like there's a lot of sharks underneath the ship at any given time.
Why?
Because the fish hold is like the water that comes out of the fish hold it's draining out anything
What's
that
a
melts.
Fish hold?
That's like, so they catch the tuna and all the other fish, and they put them down in the fish hold, and they pack ice around them, and over time the ice melts, and so there's a way for that melt water to run out the ship. So we're constantly leaking fishy smelling water, and so the sharks are following us along. It happened on the research vessel I worked on, the NOAA ship. We used to do a project where we were studying lobsters out in the Hawaiian Islands, and we were trying to put the lobsters back so that they could go back to their habitat. We were catching them and then like counting them, and then we wanted to return them so that we didn't have an impact on the population. But there's so many sharks in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands that if you just threw the lobster overboard, the shark would immediately snap it up. And so we ended up having to like lower the lobsters back down to the ground, to the bottom of the ocean, and like let them go and hope that they were able to like find like cover in the reef before the sharks got them.
Do you keep them in a cage until
Yeah.
they reach? Okay.
Yeah, I had we just had like a lobster trap that had like a release door, and we would lower them down and return the lobsters to the bottom and hope that they could like find a little crevice to go hide in before the sharks ate them.
Yeah.
One more question. I'm so sorry.
So there's a lot of sharks out there.
Is when people walk the plank, is it scary because they're going to drown, or is it scary because there's sharks underneath the boat all the time and we just didn't know this?
Yeah, I mean, you're screwed either way, I guess.
Are you going to drown first, or is the shark going to get you first?
Depends if the fishy water's running out.
So there's actually a diagram and studies done on like how long you can survive being out at sea in the ocean, and there's a direct correlation to either the water temperature. So if there's an ideal point in which you are going to survive longest, where it's not too hot, in that the hotter the water, the more sharks there are, and then like the colder the water, then you're going to die of hypothermia. So,
wow.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good to be in the water in like shark areas. Like they are, yeah. It's just that we don't really have a lot of tales about shark attacks because most of them come from shark attacks near the shore. But if more people fell in the water out at sea and were there for a long enough time, I think there would be more stories about shark attacks. But again, the sharks, I mean, here's my marine biologist spin, but sharks have a lot more to fear from us than we do from them, and we are killing sharks at a phenomenal rate relative to what they're doing to us. And I was on fishing boats that were actually finning the sharks, which is illegal. But there's loopholes around that. It was really, really disheartening to see that. But there wasn't anything I could do about it. I was just there to collect data and report what was going on, and hopefully they've closed some of those loopholes since then. But that's where they literally just cut the fin off the shark and it's still alive, and they throw it back over. So
I've seen
it just
those
drowns immediately, I assume.
So what we do to sharks is way worse than what they do to us.
Intellectually, I know that to be true. Doesn't make them any less scary.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll add another animal that's pretty terrifying is the leopard seal that lives in the Antarctic, and there's lots of like video and information about that, but we got to see them firsthand on the trip that I took down there, so that was pretty cool. They can open their mouth almost 180 degrees, and they are very large seals.
They look so cute, though.
They're cute, and then when you see them open their mouth,
yeah.
Are
they getting munched by sharks or polar bears, or what's the food chain?
So
there?
Yeah, polar bears are only in the Arctic, so they never encounter.
Oh shit! Sorry,
they never encounter leopard seals, and leopard seals don't stray farther than the Antarctic. So they feed on mostly penguins, but I think they've also been known to even attack like whales.
Wow.
And other seals for sure.
Yeah.
But I have actually witnessed them dismantling a poor little penguin. That we were at a penguin colony and watching this leopard seal just like had just caught it, and it was just like shaking it back and forth like a dog does to a small animal, and just like basically shook it so much that the like body of the penguin popped out.
Ooh.
So it, like, got rid of the skin, and then it was able to eat the contents inside.
Changes the perception on seals a little bit.
Yeah, it was gruesome.
Yeah.
Blood was everywhere.
Yeah. Just
and
tossing a seal around.
They have attacked, I believe there was actually a human diver that was killed by a leopard seal one time.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
New fear unlocked. All right.
I wasn't interested in going diving in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
But we were serving the one of the missions was putting divers in the water on one of our trips.
Yeah.
They didn't have any problems with the leopard seal. But when I was at the Palmer Station, which is where we were docking periodically to pick up new scientists, there was a thing called the polar plunge. It's kind of an initiation. If you're gonna go to Antarctica, you got to jump in the water, and so we were there and we're like, let's go do our polar plunge. And right then, when we were about ready to go do it, a leopard seal swam by. And so then we were like, yeah, let's wait a little bit. So
I could talk.
They're probably like 12 feet long. They're huge.
Damn.
Yeah.
I could talk marine biology
Yeah.
and sailing for a long time, but we should probably talk about some backpacking there.
Yeah.
So take us through the transition from living on boats to living on trail.
I just really wanted to do a through hike, and when I learned that the trail had been completed for Tararua, I was really intent on doing that because I'd been to New Zealand twice before, and that was kind of almost the genesis of my backpacking. The first time I went there, I brought like some of my first backpacking gear, and I just like went hiking everywhere. It was great. I bought a car. I would drive from one town to another, and I'd go to the Department of Conservation office, and they had these little brochures about which trails were in the area, and I just like go shopping for trails. And so I did quite a bit of hiking when I was there my first time, and I thought it'd be really cool to hike all the way from the tip of the North Island to the tip of the South Island. And so I kind of got fed up with my job in 2017, and also things that were happening with the political scene, and I just wanted to get away from the country. And so I kind of made a commitment to doing just that one trail. And the Colorado Trail came about before that because I wanted to like go test the gear that I was going to plan on taking to New Zealand, because it's really hard to get gear there once you're over there. So I didn't want to have to like be figuring things out once I was there. So the Colorado Trail is like a perfect, introduction, as you guys have discussed many times before. Perfect little compact trail to like really get a sense of what it's like to through hike. And so that was officially my first through hike. Although I had done the Trans-Catalina Trail. Yeah, that was like I did that as part of a work trip. I had a work conference in Catalina and just kind of stumbled across that trail and thought, oh, like a 3 or 4 day backpacking trip I could do.
Yeah.
Because I'd done, like trips at that length before. And so I did that trail in 2015 and like did the first couple days. I, took the ferry to Avalon, and then the work conferences was in Two Harbors. So I hiked the work conference from there, and then went to that, and then finished the rest of the trail after the conference.
That's cool.
So
what struck you as like the biggest similarities and differences of long distance backpacking versus living on a boat?
It's kind of like roughing it. So being in a different place every day and like having to give up a lot of the first couple boats the fishing boats I worked on, there was no such thing as email, or the only way I could contact the outside world was through the radio. So I was gone 3 weeks at a time. The world could have ended and I wouldn't have known it. Like, I've never been so isolated, actually. And with technology now, we have the Garmin's and satellite messenger and sat phone and all that. So ships have all of those technologies now as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, early in my career, I didn't have any communication. So that's kind of like through hiking and being away from your phone. And of course, I didn't even have a cell phone back then. So, roughing it. The fishing boats I was on didn't have bathrooms. I just go. I couldn't take a shower for weeks at a time. So, yeah.
Which is more satisfying, pooping off the edge of the boat or digging a hole?
Well, I guess the fear of sharks eating you if you don't get it right, like you go faster. But no, I much prefer the less intense experience.
For sure.
Going in a hole.
No threat of losing your balance other than maybe a mess.
Why don't you shit in a bucket and then toss the bucket contents overboard?
That I did as well. Yeah.
Just
there was
for the
one
thrill
ship.
of it?
They were wanting me to put a plastic bag. If I used the bucket, they wanted me to put a plastic bag in the bucket and then just throw the plastic bag over that. And I just couldn't bring myself to do that.
You couldn't BYOB and just pack your own bucket and tell them, I'll do with my bucket what I want.
Yeah, I didn't think of that ahead of time. I didn't have a bucket. I probably could have used I probably had a sample bucket that they had issued me, but I don't know. I just didn't think of that, and I didn't want to throw plastic trash in the ocean.
Fair.
But yeah,
that's scary.
Definitely did that on on the other ship that didn't care if I just used the bucket. But that's a much better technique.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So you were backpacking prior to hiking the Catalina Trail? That wasn't your first backpacking trip?
Yeah, I started backpacking in my early 20s, so I had been familiar with the whole thing. I didn't backpack when I lived in Colorado, and I moved away at 17, but I thought being from Colorado that was a skill I should have. And so when I got to be actually I was when I was going to school in North Carolina, I started getting interested in backpacking and started collecting some gear, which is all I got rid of it years ago, but to think about my first backpack, which I actually bought in Hawaii, oddly enough, and it was a Dana Designs. It was 7 pounds. It was so ridiculous, and it didn't even fit me. I didn't know about your torso size and getting fitted. So and I recall my actual first time I tried to go backpacking was in Maine, and I was doing an internship there, and I think we went to the AT. Because I remember we were trying to hike to a shelter, and it was just raining the whole time, and I started hiking up this giant mountain straight up, and all my stuff I was borrowing my mom's old external frame pack, had a down sleeping bag or something. Just a bunch of random gear that I'd collected or borrowed, and then all my stuff got wet within the first hour, and I was I've heard that it's not good if you get your sleeping bag wet. So I turned around and my first backpacking effort was a complete failure.
Learning lessons.
So it's kind of funny that I persevered after that to this extent.
Yeah. Okay, so Catalina Trail, and these are just through hikes, obviously. You've done stuff.
I started getting into doing gear reviews for a website called trailspace.com.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Trailspace.
And then they actually the editor started a program by which they were doing samples, and so I started doing gear reviews and testing and stuff of some gear before I actually started through hiking. So that particular trip to Catalina Trail, I had a couple items that I was testing for a gear review. So I was already starting to get pretty into it, and I'd done some longer trips in New Zealand. I think I'd done a 4-night trip. I don't know what the distance was, but I'd done some pretty remote, pretty crazy trips in New Zealand already, just 3 or 4 nights, but where it was like a route and not an actual trail. And all I had was like the Lonely Planet's guide to hiking New Zealand and like whatever dock information. And I'm like thinking back on those things. I was doing river crossings, and I was by myself, and I didn't have a GPS, and I didn't have a Garmin or any of that stuff. I didn't even have a cell phone. Like I'm just like kind of amazed that back in those days I just went for it and didn't really think about how difficult it could be. But yeah.
Did your time at sea make you more tolerant to risk? Because me personally, just thinking dealing with these gigantic swells is much more terrifying than even high water crossings, which is legitimately scary. Like, people die doing that, obviously,
Yeah.
but just me personally, that
Yeah,
being
just
on ocean is scarier.
going to New Zealand, I was like 23 the first time. You're invincible.
Yeah, young and dumb.
So, yeah, I did these crazy river crossings, and there was even one of those cable car things I did on a couple of the rivers in New Zealand. I don't even know if the cable car exists, but like I had to like reel the cable like across to my side and like jump in with my pack on and just like go zipping across. So that was, I guess it all just seemed like a big adventure at the time,
Yeah.
fitting with my lifestyle at sea.
Yeah. Okay, so then Colorado Trail TA. So what month did you finish the TA?
I finished in March, then came back to I did a couple little hikes after I finished because I wasn't flying till I think April. Got back here in the beginning of April and then pivoted right into the PCT. That's why that's kind of what started my whole southbound career, is that, it was already kind of late. I thought I figured it was too late to get a permit for going northbound. I got back from Tararua and I just I don't know what to do now. I really love this thru hiking thing, and I just wanted to keep going for a little while. Of course, I didn't think it would transfer into all of this, but I talked to some people on the Tararua that had done the PCT as well, and it just sounded amazing. So, and then I was like, well, why can't I go southbound? Then I could have a little bit of time off in between, and looked into it, and I was like, you could just grab a southbound permit. Like, I think I applied for it 2 weeks in advance or something, just spur of the minute. And they didn't even have a restriction on number of southbounders at the time. I think they implemented that in the next year. But
quick interjection. It's funny because it feels like we're talking about way back in the day, and this is 2018.
I know.
Yeah. Back then you could just grab a permit. Back then they didn't have the.
Yeah, it is. It's getting to be a long time ago now.
7 years
that's
ago.
So
yeah.
weird.
In 2011.
Yeah. No, I know. Ancient. Before they had color photos. Okay, so you started southbound. When did you start southbound?
July 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had the Washington Cascade snow melted out pretty well, or did you start in snow?
Enough. I didn't even do ice sacks or microspikes.
Yeah.
And just kind of started walking through some snow, but it was no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also hike southbound. The caveat with hiking PCT southbound is you got to move pretty quickly because you want to be through the Sierra by...
As you know, yeah.
Yeah, by end of September.
Didn't do it in 100 days, Zach, but I think I did it in 115. So yeah, I was, and coming off of Tararua, I had pretty good trail legs, I guess.
Yeah.
I was thinking I knew everything and was in amazing shape. Of course, now I look back on it, I was like, oh man, I was such a newbie.
So were you still learning things at the point on the PCT?
I had the gear dialed in, but yeah, still learning things, of course. I'm still learning things now.
True. Yeah. 115 days is still fast. Did you feel under pressure during that hike? I don't really get too much time off because I got to get to the end of the Sierra?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. I think I only took 5 zeros the entire hike. And just recently when I rehiked the desert section, I took more than 5 zeros in just that desert section. So definitely the pressure was on as a southbounder, and all the southbounders were feeling it, like, and, I remember doing a 28-mile day, like going into Stehekin already, we were doing pretty big days, but I felt like and even still, I felt like I was like dawdling the whole time through Washington, because it took me almost a month to get through Washington.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I got to Oregon, I was like, I've got to pick up the pace. And then I did, but it's like I think when it really hit me that I was like, oh, I got to go faster, was getting down to, where was it, Donner Pass, just finished Northern California, and like it started getting really cold and windy, and it was almost the end of, it was already into September, so I was like, oh my God, and I got to be through.
At Donner Pass. Oh yeah, I
yeah,
guess, yeah.
I think it was already beginning of September, sometime around then.
Yeah.
I had my birthday, I have August 26th is like when I always measure things by. Where was I for my birthday? And that was in Etna. So yeah, it was already like, and I got to Kennedy Meadows South on October 1st, and it snowed in the Sierra
Yeah.
So I felt very redeemed
Just
in
as the
pushing
fable
as I
predicts.
needed
Yeah.
to. Yeah, absolutely. And
Did you talk to any hikers behind you that got trapped?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of people had to like skip some sections of the Sierra. Yeah, I was just really grateful that I pushed, because I think I did the whole Sierra section in like 3 weeks, which, I was way too short on like the food, had like way big calorie deficit, and came out of Kearsarge Pass, like did 3 passes that day, and basically bonked when I got to the trailhead there, and luckily I was able to go to Bishop and like kind of replenish and start carrying more food.
Yeah, that's fun. I also did 3 passes at Kearsarge Pass.
Yeah.
Is it the Onion Valley Trailhead? What is it?
Yeah, down to Onion
yeah.
Valley. We started on the other side of Pincho Pass that day, and then did like whatever one's next, Mather.
I think it is Mather, yeah.
And then Kearsarge.
Yeah. That was one of my hardest days,
Yeah.
possibly the hardest day of backpacking I've ever had. That just kicked my ass so bad.
And I had like almost no food left, and because I had been counting on going to Muir Trail Ranch and getting like raiding the hiker box there, and they had closed the day before.
Oh wow.
And I didn't even have far out, so I didn't even I hiked all the way there and then saw like a note posted to a tree that they were closed, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And I was an idiot because I should have just went in there, because there were still people around and been like begging. I could have just begged some food from somebody.
Sure. So at what point are you adopting the more modern trail technology?
Oh,
Far out.
like
A
far
satellite
out.
communicator.
Yeah, I could have used it as early as the CT, far out was already in existence in 17. But yeah, I was just being stubborn, and I finally started using far out like on the CDT. And of course now it's like I really wish I'd had it on the PCT, because I didn't have the water information when I got to the desert in the fall and there was no water there. I was relying on people to like send me the notes from the far out comments to know where the water caches were and how much.
Did people ever tell you to like just get it?
I know. I've actually bought I've bought all those trails since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Go figure. I mean, it was great. I actually was using it already since I bought it for the PCT.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you finish the PCT, get on the CDT. Is that northbound, southbound?
So that one I was really anxious to get on the trail, and my plan was to hike as far as the Colorado border and then flip-flop. And I went because I wanted to finish in Colorado because it's my home state. Salute. And I ended up getting off earlier because of a family emergency. So I got off in Grants. So mostly I did the CDT southbound except for that last, whatever it is, 200 miles to Grants, from Grants to the border.
Okay. So hike to Grants and then flip up to the Canada border.
That year everybody was flipping. It was 19,
Yeah.
so high snow. And I had no intention of trying to go through the San Juans in the snow. And I was going to come back to my parents in Colorado and stay with them for a while and then go up to Glacier and go south. But just ended up doing that a little earlier than expected, and it worked out fine. CDT, I'll probably try to do that trail another time because it was because of that year and what was going on with my family. It was just very disjointed, and I'd like to give it a better shot again and fresh perspective. So hopefully someday I'll get back to that trail. I'm in the works of trying to rehike the PCT right now. So when I finished that trail, I was like, the day I finished, I was like, I am going to hike this trail again. I loved it so much. Haven't said that about every other trail. And I was going to through hike it again. And then I wasn't sure which direction I would end up going if I did that. And then because I ended up hiking Northern California as a part of this other trail, or couple of trails I put together, I decided I would just do the other sections as sections, and not so I wouldn't have to rehike Northern California a third time.
Yeah. So you mentioned you finished PCT. You're like, I have to rehike this trail.
Yeah.
Gun to your head, you had to rank your top 3 trails of all the ones that you've done.
Yeah, I like when you ask this question to everybody. Top 3 of all the Triple Crown or
No,
all of them?
All trails.
That's hard. I don't know. They're all so different. If I had to rank, like, of course, the Triple Crown, it'd be a little easier. But for some reason, the PNT always comes to my mind, even though that was one of the most difficult and horrific trails I ever did at times.
Why is that?
Oh, first and foremost, the mosquitoes. I think I actually thought about quitting that trail several times just because the mosquitoes were so horrible. But now I know how to be better prepared for those. And then the bushwhacks, the challenges with that, and then the road walking didn't bother me too much. But I think in the end, I actually liked all of those challenges.
This is a very big circle of worst trail. It was actually okay. Actually, I think I liked it.
It was the right amount of suffering and also reward in that trail. And I don't know, I just had a really good time at the end. So I don't know, it was a neat trail. That's not a trail.
So are we putting PCT in there, PNT?
I think you added PCT. She's only done PNT so far.
Oh, the PCT is definitely in there.
Oh, is it?
Every
Okay.
time I go back and hike parts of it, it's like, oh, I love this trail.
Yeah.
I fall in love with it every time.
Yeah.
So, but Oregon Coast Trail, that was a great trail. But totally different. How do you compare that to any other trail, really? It's not a trail either. It's just walking on the beach. And the Hayduke, that's amazing. Had my difficulties with that one, and the Hayduke was the first I didn't finish, and I didn't finish at the time. I came back and did the rest of it in the fall. So once I did finish it, I started liking it more. But because I had so many difficulties with it in the first part, I was like, I don't know about that trail.
What were the difficulties?
That was 2023 when they had all the snow in the Sierra, and there was a lot of snow in Arizona as well, and Utah. So, the whole Grand Canyon part was pretty messed up. That was the year the North Kaibab Trail was closed until middle of June or something because of washouts. So I had to change my route. I couldn't even hike back through to get to the North Rim unless I did the Bass Trail. And then the Park Service recommended not doing that because you would have to cross this creek that was raging at the time because of all the snow melt on the North Rim. And then the Hayduke does a route back down into the canyon for a third time through Saddle Canyon and to Pete's Creek, and that's considered the hardest day on the Hayduke. And that was out of the question for that spring. The to Pete's Creek would have been raging, and it would have been impossible to go down that route. So anybody that tried to complete the Hayduke that spring ended up having to do a bunch of reroutes, and yeah, it was so worth it to come back in the fall and complete it then when the conditions were right, because I did get to go down Saddle Canyon and down. You have to walk like 200, maybe 100 yards down to Pete's Creek through a narrows area, so you're walking right in the middle of the creek. So you can only do it if it's like not raging from the snow melt. So it's hard in the spring because of that reason, but especially that spring, it was just impossible. But I did get to do the actual Hayduke route through that section, and then also the other part that would have been impossible is going down the Virgin River to get to Zion, because that river was also too high at the time. So was able to do that section as well in the fall. So the Hayduke had a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Did you know what you were signing up for during a high snow year in the Hayduke?
Yeah. Didn't think that there's another stretch called Dark Canyon that's near Height. It's after you go through Canyonlands, and it's a popular canyon. Like there's a trail that goes along Dark Canyon, and that is usually it's popular because there's usually perennial water there, and like people, so you have water along that creek, and it's usually these described as emerald blue pools of water and beautiful, and it was a raging river when we went down it. In fact, we met pack rafters that were going to go pack raft down that canyon. So it's like almost never flowing, and the pack rafters have been monitoring the conditions for like over 5 years, and this was finally like the perfect time for them. And they got excited when I showed them my video of like the river just like raging down this canyon. Yeah. So we had to cross that river a bunch of times, like 20 times or something that day. Nothing was like terrible, but we weren't even expecting there to be flowing water like that. And it was just totally different from what I was expecting. But on the upside, we had lots of drinking water. Didn't have to carry as much water during that route. In fact, I don't think I ever carried more than like 3 or 4 liters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, you've done enough hiking here that we're going to yada yada some of these trails. So
yeah.
CDT 19, Arizona Trail 19, Long Trail 20. We talked about the Grand Enchantment Trail, but it's been a minute. So refresh us on the GET. Give us the brief overview.
The Grand Enchantment Trail was conceived of by Brett Tucker. It's one of a Brett Tucker route, and it basically takes you from Phoenix to Albuquerque, and that's why it's called the Grand, like the Grand Canyon, and Enchantment. New Mexico's the land of enchantment. Grand Enchantment Trail. It starts in the Superstitions, goes south, utilizes the Arizona Trail a little bit, breaks off, goes through, I think Aravipa Canyon is the one area where you have to have a permit. We didn't get a permit, so didn't even go through that. And that's supposed to be one of the highlights. Still haven't seen that. We had to go around, and takes you across over to, it goes over a bunch of sky islands, which if you're familiar with in the topography of Arizona, there's these like, it's part of the Arizona Trail too, like Mount Lemon and the Mika Mountain. You just go up way high and come straight back down. So we went through like what's that? I can't remember the one range, and then the Pinaleños, and went through some more canyons. It's a very canyony, similar to the Hayduke route, but it also takes you through the Pinaleños had snow quite a bit, still a couple feet. So we ended up kind of taking some alternate routes to get around the snow. So it's kind of an interesting mix of, you've got, canyons and river crossings and walking up rivers, but also higher altitude with snow. Crossed over the border with Arizona and New Mexico, and then got into like the Mogollon Mountains and down into the Gila River. And
are all these things like, on your notes, or are you just really good at remembering these names?
I do have amazing recollect because of my blog, because I write all of these names down.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just like shocked that you
Yeah,
keep knowing
no.
all these different names. It's really impressive.
I know it's like way too much information.
No, it's not.
I can like rattle off like all these like mountain ranges and stuff just from, I mean, I'm also just passionate about geography.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things about the Grand Enchantment I appreciated was that on top of the Pinaleños, we could see mountains all the way back to basically to the Superstitions. And we could see ahead to the Mogollon Mountains. And then from the Mogollon Mountains, you could see ahead to, what's the range? The one outside, what was the name of that one? It was there was another mountain range that we were standing above, right above Socorro, New Mexico. So, and then from from that mountain range, which, see, I don't have perfect recollect, but from that mountain range, you could see all the way to our finish line, which was the Manzanita Mountains by Albuquerque. So it's kind of neat that there was like 4 points that you could see the entire, 4 points from which you could see the entire, 3 points actually, the whole route essentially. I'm a real geography nerd like that.
I just wish I had your recall.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I had a similar experience on this desert hike where I could like, from this one, it was the high point of the trail, Mount Harquahala, which was right on the border. It was still a little ways, but it was in Arizona, but you could see into California from there. And according to my little Peak Finder app, that's my other favorite app that I use.
I like that one.
Yeah, I could see, according to that, you could see Mount San Jacinto all the way.
Could you?
No, I couldn't see it that day. It was too hazy, but it's always like exciting just to know. And I verified that because I actually got to go to the top of San Jacinto on the PCT, and I like saw the little blip of Harquahala over there. So that was pretty cool. And from Harquahala, I could see back to Tabletop Mountain, which was one of the features along the route. And then from Tabletop, I could see all the way back to Mount Lemmon, which was where Tucson is, where I started. So basically those 3 points I could see the whole route.
I'm just impressed. Like, when I was on the top of San Jacinto, I couldn't tell you a single one of the mountains I could see. And I feel like even in Colorado, when we're driving to the mountains and they have the turnoffs where it says all the different little ranges and all the different little peaks, I never remember it.
Yeah.
And I'll have friends that come into town and I'll be driving towards the mountains. I'm like, oh, what's that one? I don't know. It's in the background. I see it every day. I don't know.
Yeah.
This feels like a superpower, kind of.
I'm just a really big nerd when it comes to mountaintop peaks. I've gotten kind of into peak bagging a little bit, and I absolutely love being able to see like mountains from far away. Like, for instance, I'm really enthralled with how far you can see Mount Shasta when you're on the PCT.
Yeah.
So I didn't pay attention to all those details when I was doing the PCT. And then these are like things I've sharpened my skills on over time. And I tell people all the time, like, this is just something that comes about after you've hiked so many miles. Like, you've got your gear dialed in, you know exactly what your food and water requirements are. You're not worried about where your friend is on the trail, so now I'm able to focus more on the geography and the flora and fauna. And, just that's how it becomes like a constant learning process that you've expanded, you've gotten past the basics, and that's all. It doesn't even require thought hardly anymore, and then you can focus on all these other things and expand your knowledge of.
Do you learn the range and then okay, this peak is the highest in that range, so that's got to be this one? Because I feel like mountains look different from every angle. Like, one mountain, depending on what side you're on, could look different. And with so many of them, that's a lot. I'm
always actually trying to, that's why I like Peak Finder, because it shows you the profile and like confirms it's like if you thought this bump was this, but then you take out your Peak Finder, it's like, oh, it's actually this bump, because you're looking at it from a different perspective. So the 14ers are like a really great way to practice because they're so prominent here. So every time I go up to a different 14er, I try to like do a 360 and be able to identify all the other peak 14ers that I've already done, and be like, okay, that's Quandary Peak. That's, whatever you can see in that area. And then you go do a different 14er and you're seeing it from a different angle, so that you're kind of able to calibrate that skill over time, by practicing. And these are all important skills in navigation too.
Yeah.
So it's actually really a practical skill to learn. And you just use Peak Finder, like reinforce kind of trying to do it without the Peak Finder at first and be like, I think that's Gray's Peak. And Gray's Peak is easy because it's next to Torrey's Peak, and you look for the little double camel hump thing. And then you can kind of, in relation to Gray's and Torrey's, you can kind of like calibrate yourself what's around Gray's and Torrey's. You can see this and these other peaks in relation to those two. So
I feel like Colorado is
it's in my
brown
blood.
belt or black belt
Yeah.
level peak. I like doing it in Washington, which is more like white belt, just because there's so few volcanoes.
Oh yeah, those are great too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a little bit easier.
I feel like there's some
Yeah.
mountains, like, that mountain is that mountain. Like, the Matterhorn is the Matterhorn.
Yeah.
Like it just looks like that mountain. But so many of them are just, it's like meeting identical twins when you're like, I could tell something's different between you.
I think I must have got my start on the ship actually, because when we were sailing off the Hawaiian Islands, you could be like, okay, that's Oahu, and that's Maui, because you can see the two volcanoes there, and here's the Big Island, because you can see Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea.
That makes sense. That actually does.
And there's
check
a
out.
lot fewer to have to figure out.
Yeah. So just quickly, because you mentioned your website, just want to give a plug.
Oh, yeah.
Twigadventures.com, and yeah, you have really in-depth, like day-to-day breakdowns of your hikes and overviews of the trails.
Yeah.
Very cool. People should check it out.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
Go ahead with your question.
I feel like you already answered this, but just in case there's anything that you might want to add, I was going to ask this before you elaborated, and now I think maybe you covered it. But let me know if there's anything I didn't or you didn't that you want to add. If you are someone like me that's not good at remembering peaks or features or things like that and has bad recall, what would be some novice tips you would give to having a thru hike where you can be more aware of your surroundings and remember what you're seeing better? Like marking those peaks,
Yeah, Far Out does a pretty terrible job of I don't think the maps are that great, and
it's a pretty thin corridor of the trail.
It doesn't call attention to like your surroundings as much. So again, a Peak Finder is like probably the number one recommendation I give to like start to bring out practicing that skill. But the PCT, if you do that, it's a great trail for peak finding, starting with the volcanoes. But even if you're going northbound, starting down in the desert, you can actually see San Jacinto pretty early on. So just kind of making it you make it a challenge with your friends to be like, how, who's going to see San Jacinto first or something, and try to figure out where it's like first visible. And then you can play that game with all the ones going forward, and then I like to look backwards all the time and see where I've come from, and like how you could see San Jacinto from, I went up to do a little peak bagging just before Walker Pass. And I went up to Skinner Mountain. You could see San Jacinto from there. I'm sorry. You couldn't see San Jacinto. You could see San Gorgonio. But that's like, you're looking at like all the way back, along the Angeles Range there. That's pretty incredible, like distance. And from there you could see Mount Whitney. So it's pretty cool that you can see so much of the route that way. And the way that the Pacific Crest travels, how it breaks to the east along the Angeles Range, or west if you're going northbound. You can see that whole mountain range for a very long ways. But I guess, the last time I could see San Jacinto was technically before I dropped down into Agua Dulce that day. So it kind of gets blocked by San Gorgonio. But yeah, it's like making it, I was telling some of the people that were going northbound this year, I was like, oh, when you get past Belden, go up that first ridge and look, because you can see Shasta from there. that's like your first vision of that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And you'll be seeing it for the next like 3 or 4 weeks. And I actually, that's one of the statistics I keep track of in my blog, is for how long I could see like one particular mountain. So on the PCT, I actually was paying attention to how long I could see Rainier. So it just becomes like a challenge. It's like, can I see Rainier today? And you just like look around, and then you bring out your peak finder and see if it tells you that it's visible, and maybe it's just behind a cloud or haze or whatever, but fire, smoke. I didn't see any of Northern California in 2018. It was entirely in smoke. So it was really exciting to see Shasta this second time around. Yeah.
Okay, cleaned up. You got your Triple Crown in 21. Anything you want to highlight from that?
I liked the AT.
It's so often that we hear when someone gets the AT as their last Triple Crown trail, they're just like doing it to check the box. You didn't feel that way.
Yes, but I really enjoyed it. I was happy to do it, and I even consider probably doing it again.
Northbound, southbound?
I went southbound.
Okay.
So I did the Triple Crown southbound for the most part, and I really enjoyed the southbound experience. It was different, but I feel like I still got the AT experience, going to all the hostels and not doing the social thing as much, and that was by design, of course, but I had a good time, and I also was kind of trying to do it fast. So I did that one technically in 100 days. I was aiming for 100. It was 104, but I took 4 zeros. So
yeah.
I guess it counts.
Yeah, that's
close enough.
That's fast. Yeah, nice.
So I was like on an agenda in that regard, but it was really nice to go with a very lightweight pack. I started for the first time doing just the frameless pack.
That was the 2021, the AT, where you started going frameless?
Yeah. I actually went on the Colorado Trail with a frameless the very first time. I was trying to rock a Gossamer Gear Murmur. It was a little too small. And then I basically moved up to a Hyperlight after that and did everything with that pack for all those years. But then I went with a Waymark. Of course, they're out of business, but yeah, it was a nice pack. Just I figured, what do I need? Like 3 days of food and no water and 30-degree quilt. Yeah, I just wanted to go really light on that.
And you could probably bring a tarp, because I imagine you've got a shelter to yourself most nights.
No,
at least when once you get past the bubble, at least I would imagine.
I didn't stay in a shelter for the first month, actually. Yeah, because it was the
black
northbound. No, there were no. I started July 25th.
Okay.
Yeah, there were no flies.
Yeah.
There were no ticks. That was by design as well. I already had Lyme disease. Don't want to get it again. And yeah, I just wanted to avoid the bugs, avoid the people. Of course, I had like all the northbound bubble coming through, and like the whites and southern Maine. It wasn't that big of a deal, I guess. No, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I spent half the nights probably camping by myself on the AT, just in my tent. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I definitely was glad I had a tent, just because of the rain. And a couple times I got the puddling thing going on, because I went through some pretty severe storms on that trail. We had 3 post-tropical, post-hurricane storms that came through, one of which was Ida, I think. It caused a lot of damage in like New York, that one, flooding. But there was like 2 before that. So when I was in Vermont, I just got slammed for a whole day with rain from one of them. And then the second one was an actual hurricane that hit Connecticut as a class 1. I don't remember. I think it was Henri, and it came right up the Connecticut River. And like I was in southern Vermont, so I spent the night in that Bromley ski hut. It just like rained a lot.
That's where I met Moron.
Yeah. So that was good timing.
Was the trail all washed out after that, or?
It was wet. Yeah, that stretch from like Manchester City to all the way south past Stratton. Oh God, it was so muddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did the long trail the year before. I didn't know what vermud was. It was so dry in like the fall. I hardly hit any patches of mud.
Yeah.
On the long trail.
What time of the year did you do it? You said fall, but like what month?
Yeah, it was end of September, early October, perfect for the trees.
Yeah.
Definitely do the long trail in the fall.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was a little bit too
And-
early, but
And I was, and going through on the AT, it was like August or something, so it was still too much mud.
yeah.
And then that final hurricane that hit Ida dropped like 8 inches of rain overnight. So like the trail was so flooded all the way through New York and New Jersey even. And
8
like
inches of rain, that's so much.
Yeah.
people died in that like there were people living in basement apartments in New York and they got like trapped in the basements and
Wow.
flooded. Yeah, it was bad.
Damn.
It was a bad storm. But for us on the trail, we went into Kent, Connecticut and got a hotel room. I really hate Connecticut.
Why is that?
No, it's just I don't like Connecticut. It was not a good trail town there, and everything was very expensive. But got past Connecticut, got into New York, and got like even the boardwalk section in New Jersey was like pretty flooded still. And then the worst part about that was the mosquitoes. Were just like there was like this bloom of mosquitoes. This was after Labor Day.
The late bug
September.
season. Yeah.
It's like getting swarmed. So yeah, I was glad I had a tent.
I'm sure.
I said I avoided all the mosquitoes, which was mostly true in Maine, but then go figure.
Yeah.
But the rest of the trip was really great weather. After the hurricanes, it was like it got pretty nice through Pennsylvania and all the way through Virginia and into the last 2 weeks in like North Carolina. It was like I finished November 3rd, and that last week of October and November got pretty cold and rainy, typical, for that time of year. But it was really good weather other than that for the Mid-Atlantic section.
Yeah.
So,
What about the Mogollon Rim Trail?
no
I
one
thought it
knows how to
was-
pronounce this.
I thought it was
Mogollon?
Mongolian when I glanced at it, but now I see it's Mogollon.
I think I said.
Mogollon?
Yeah.
Oh,
And I've heard Mogollon. There's a whole bunch. Like,
but not Mogollon.
yeah, you can say whatever. I
think that's what I
there's
said
no
when we
agreement on
interviewed
it.
Dirtmonger, because he
Yeah.
had done it also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you fucked it up this time.
Thank you. It's not that, it's Moab.
Mugon. I've heard all sorts of different things. But yeah, it's an escarpment it's basically where the Colorado Plateau drops off into the desert of Arizona. And Brett came up with the idea for this route to kind of follow along the escarpment, and it starts near Sedona, Cottonwood, technically, Arizona, and you go through all those red rock features around Sedona, which is really cool, and it kind of follows along, goes up and down the rim, spits you out in Pine, which is along the Arizona Trail, and then you actually follow the Arizona Trail for about 20 miles until it breaks off, and the Arizona Trail goes up the Mogollon Rim. I don't know if have either of you hiked it. I'm not sure. And this route breaks and keeps following along the base of the Mogollon Rim, and then eventually goes back up on, and it kind of. Then there's a big Indian reservation to the east of there, so it has to kind of like follow along on top of the Colorado Plateau and goes through past a little town called Sholo and past the ski area in the White Mountains. I bet you didn't know there's a ski area in Arizona there. And it goes past that and breaks down and off the rim again and goes down and hits the border with New Mexico. It's kind of a weird one, but it was preferable to the Grand Enchantment Trail in my experience.
Interesting. Why is that? Because obviously the Grand Enchantment Trail is much more popular.
Yeah, so you asked me about the Get, and it's actually one of my least favorite trail. It just was it was just a little, I guess, it's kind of my first route, and it's been impacted by a lot of fire. A lot of those sky islands have been impacted by fires. So we had some bad days going through burns, and it's not Brett's fault or anything. And he designed the route well before many of those fires had impacted those areas. So, and it's just like, yeah, it's an interesting one, but I just liked the scenery along the Mogollon Rim better. Water sources were still difficult. Both the Get and Mogollon Rim, there were a lot of difficulties with water. Some bigger carries and then just really poor water sources in general.
Are you caching water for yourself, or how does that work?
I didn't on those trips. Didn't think it would probably. I got by without having water caches, but yeah, there were just some longer. There was one day where we thought a spring was running, and the people just in front of these routes all have collaborative water reports, so there's no far out for them, but there's Google Sheets that people update, and people also sometimes put the information on the Facebook pages, and both of those had Facebook pages that people were kind of updating some of the hikers just ahead of us on the Grand Enchantment Trail had reported that there was a spring that was running, and they were there only like a week before us, and then got to that spring that day and it was completely dry, so have been kind of counting on that, and we'd seen water about 7 miles back at that point, so it was kind of a tough call whether to go back to where we'd seen some water or keep pressing forward. It just was like a rough day with the water situation. But I mean, yeah, I've had some tough times with water even on the Arizona Trail because I did that in the fall and it was pretty poor water sources back then.
Yeah. So for this one, the Mogollon was not even close. How much? Yeah, go ahead, correct me.
Mogollon? But somebody else will have a different, Mogollon, something like that.
How much is actually on trail and how much is just pure route finding?
There's a good amount of trail. A lot of these routes that he does follow old roads. So it's not a road walk, like in the sense that you're walking on a highway or anything. It's like a really old road that's really just a trail. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what his stats are on that. He has stats on his website about how much is trail, how much is road, how much is completely route finding. There's stretches where you're just going up a canyon, down a canyon, Hayduke style, maybe 30%. I'd just say like a third of all of each kind. There was a lot of trails around Sedona and at the beginning, so...
It's interesting to me how diverse your interest in trail types is, because I feel like when we interview people who are the mega ultra backpacker thru hiker have done everything, they tend to like gravitate toward one style of trail, like Dirtmonger ends up loving he does everything, but he ends up loving like the desert style hikes.
Desert people love desert hikes.
Yeah, totally. PMags is kind of the same way out in the Southwest.
Yep.
You cited your 3 favorite trails as kind of like Pacific E trails, Pacific Northwest, Pacific Crest Trail, and the Oregon Coast Trail.
Yeah.
But still, you're doing all these desert hikes as well. You just appreciate everything, I guess.
Well, I would say that my recent desert hike was right up there in the top of the list there. So yeah, definitely. I just like walking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty adaptable to whatever, but really appreciated. I'm good in the desert, even though my fair skin. I've been accused of being a ginger. I don't know.
Accused?
You're gonna have to work hard to pull that off in this room.
I have red highlights.
Yeah.
You've been graced with being called a ginger.
And I definitely have the fair skin of a ginger, so I have to be desert. Besides that, like I'm good on water. I can tolerate the heat, so I'm perfectly happy in the desert, and it's just I like mixing it up. So
from the ocean to the desert, truly mixing it up.
Yeah. That was fun.
Okay, definitely have never talked about the Pacific Coast Bigfoot Crest Rim Trail.
This is me getting desperate for a long distance hike. No, I just wanted to, I have all these littler trails on my list, and I'm like, why not just combine them into one longer trail?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That was my, so Oregon Coast Trail to the Bigfoot Trail to the PCT and then finishing up with the Tahoe Rim Trail.
Okay. And what's the distance on this one?
I think that one ended up being about 1,400, 1,500 miles, something like that. It's in my stats for that year. I can't remember it off the top, but
has anyone done this since you or before you?
No, I don't think so. I mentioned it I've never met him, but you guys had him as a guest, Buck 30, who's a prolific hiker, and I've he's been a inspiration obviously for me for many years. I think his was the first blog I ever read because I was looking into doing Terra Aurora, and he's one of the few people that had done it and written a journal about it. So I've known of him for a long time, and recently kind of been in touch with him. And I knew that he had done both of the OCT and the Bigfoot Trail, and I mentioned like combining the two of them because he and Steady, his partner, had gone past the end of the Oregon coast all the way to, what's it called, Crescent City, California, and they had hiked all the way down into the redwoods. So I kind of followed along the same path as him, and I mentioned that I was going to connect the two. He's like, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea, and then had been wanting to do the Tahoe Rim, and I was like, instead of dealing with the travel logistics from getting one place to the other, it's just like I'll just walk there from the Bigfoot Trail. The Bigfoot Trail actually does meet up with the PCT just north of Syed Valley, and then breaks off of it around Marble Mountain. And I followed it as far south as the Trinity Alps. So I didn't do the whole trail. That and the GDT are the only two trails I haven't really completed. And that was by design for the Bigfoot Trail because I didn't really want to do all the road walking just to get to the very last bit at the end, which is in the Yolovoli Wilderness, and didn't see the point of all that road. It was like 70 miles of dirt road walking just to do 20 miles in the wilderness area, which caught on fire the next day that I rejoined the PCT, and then that wilderness area was on fire. So just as well that I didn't try to do that, and got back on the PCT from the Bigfoot Trail and kept going south till I hit the Tahoe Rim.
I've got your stats. You hiked 1,425 miles. Right. 361.5 were on the Oregon Coast Trail. 193 were the Bigfoot Trail. 689 were the PCT. 195.5so were the Tahoe Rim. And then the PLT, you had a bonus 78.
Oh, yeah.
What's the PLT?
It's like, so there's these trail angels, Scott and Sailor, that Scott has a cool little cabin in Pinecrest, which is down the pass from Sonora Pass. And I had met them at Trail Days that year, and they were like, come stay at the cabin if you make it that far. And so I actually hiked the extra distance starting from Carson Pass all the way to Sonora Pass after I got off the Tahoe Rim Trail. And then I was hanging out at the cabin for a couple days waiting for a friend to pick me up to go back to Phoenix to finish the Hayduke, and had some extra time, and they were like, oh, we have this great little route that we put together, a loop hike that started from their cabin, went all the way up through the Emigrant Wilderness, connected to the PCT, and it went past that. It went to Dorothy Lake into Yosemite, and then popped out of Yosemite and then went back through the Immigrant Wilderness and back down to their cabin.
Some of your stats on here are kind of wild, because while I was reading this, I was thinking, if you list out all your zeros and where you took them, does that make you want a zero less so that it looks better in the reporting? But I'm scrolling through this, and it's not even just the zeros. It's duration, days on each of the trails, distance hiked, longest day, shortest day, days hiking 15 or less, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, biggest elevation gain, favorite sections, high point, peak bagging, time period, national parks, nights tenting on or near trail, camping alone.
Yeah, I like that.
This is so much data. Longest I went without a shower, precipitation on the trail, campfires enjoyed, injuries. It's just insane. Pettings, cats, camel, bunny, dogs, horses, mules. You even categorize what you pet.
I that started in New Zealand because of all the farm animals along the way.
That's so funny.
It was kind of a theme. I just liked I like animals, and there's some. I just had such a wide array of animals that I petted on the Terra Aurora. I was like, I should keep track of this. Haven't gotten as many on other, but I got a camel on that Oregon Coast Trail, which was incredible.
Where'd you find a camel?
I had watched before I did the Hayduke. I watched that documentary called Tracks. It's great if you get a chance. It's about a woman who trekked across the outback of Australia with her camels. And in that documentary, I learned that camels make incredible noises. You have to listen to the camel noises. They're just beyond anything else. And then I was hiking the Oregon Coast Trail, staying in, I believe, Pacific City.
Once more.
I mean, it's like a really sick cow or something. And in that movie, they make, it's like just full of these camel noises. I was kind of making camel noises on the Hayduke because I had just watched the movie and just out of like boredom. I make a lot of animal noises sometimes when I'm hiking.
Can you give us your best one?
No, not now. No. I have to be on trail. No, I do a good turkey. I've had turkeys.
Oh, I do a good turkey too.
Oh,
I've done that on the podcast.
You go first, John.
Mine's really good. I'm not doing it if she's not doing it.
That's pretty good. I don't.
You guys gotta join me down this rabbit hole, this turkey hole.
I'm probably better at a rooster, but I don't. It's
that's good. Getting flashbacks.
You're just walking down, you just make random noises. I like to make Sasquatch noises sometimes too.
What noises does Sasquatch make?
Oh God, that you get wild with that, but you have to be outside to do that.
We're in the forest right now. What are you talking about?
Nah, it's probably similar to a camel, actually. Anytime they've heard Sasquatch noises, it was probably a camel.
Okay.
But the camel, I just was on the beach and like staying at this campground right by the beach and like heard these noises. And I was actually with another hiker. He was like, man, that horse has some indigestion or something. And because it was coming from a trailer, and I'm like, no, that was a camel. And he's like, what? I was like, that was the noise that a camel makes. And we walked over there and looked in the trailer, and sure enough, it was 2 camels.
Wow.
I was just like, oh my God. And these people had the 2 camels. They were taking them to a wedding to be like the backdrop of the wedding, I guess. Huh. That's the odd. Maybe you should have you planned on getting a camel for your wedding?
I've heard of the beer burros. So jumping back to our burros, I've seen burros that have like little like pockets on the sides with beers in it, or they have like tequila and limes. Our welcome party's a fiesta theme, so it's fitting for a beer burro.
I guess sadly a camel would have to be like carrying like cigarettes or something. That's probably not very fitting. I'm just thinking, like, what are they gonna put?
Sure, they could carry beer too.
They could do whatever. They can. They carry things. So the camel, I don't know. Yeah, that was a great petting.
Yeah.
Long story short. Long story long. Where do you go after that?
Yeah,
waiting for Zach to figure it out.
Grand Canyon rafting 24. We've talked about that. I know that's an epic one and like a very competitive lottery.
Yeah, I just joined on like a trip, so
yeah.
That was inspired by the Hayduke, like because I hitched rides on that down the river. You probably heard of people. Yeah, there's like those sections where you can ride on the raft, and you have to hitch a ride to get across anyway. So I was like, man, I got to do this rafting thing. I'd rafted with my parents when I lived in Colorado as a teenager, so we did some trips on the Colorado and Arkansas and Yampa. So I wanted to get back into that, but after doing that Grand Canyon trip, I don't know if I'm gonna do more.
Yeah,
it's just so much gear. It was really frustrating going from this backpacking background with all the like minimalist stuff and having to load up all that gear every day and unpack it at the end of it was like too much and it hurt my back. So, but it was amazing to see the canyon. I'm so enthralled with the Grand Canyon, and I want to do, like, I've thought about that like Grand Canyon Traverse that looks like it's so hard and scary. If I could find the right person to do that with, I'd love to tackle that someday, but I don't know if it's in me. Lots of like scrambling, just going down Saddle Canyon on the Hayduke was probably more scrambling than I I worked up to it and did some, like, I don't know, class 3 stuff to get down that canyon, but it was hard for me. I'm not the best scrambler, but
going down canyon walls kind of
and on that trip I had my first like pretty serious hiking injury. I dislocated my shoulder.
It's a serious one.
Yeah, and
I pop it back into place.
Yeah, it went right back in, but on its own, I just had to like rotate it. And since that time, I've dislocated it 5 times while hiking it.
Yeah.
And once on this desert trip, twice last summer, and then once during this desert hike where I probably couldn't have been in a more remote spot when it happened, and I was just like, all right, got to deal with this.
Are you gonna have to get surgery on it?
Probably, since it keeps coming out.
Yeah. To that point, how are you funding all these hikes?
Yeah. Since I'm older and had worked for almost 20 years with all the ship stuff, and I also being on a ship, I didn't spend a lot of my money. I don't have kids. I live with my partner in Miami, but so I don't have a lot of living expenses either. And I just pretty much am going off my savings. So
this is all just saved from your time at sea?
Yeah, I didn't spend a lot of money. I, lived pretty minimalist all my life. And yeah, I'm just trying to, I've done some gig work, but with the inflation and with the, I'm earning less like interest in CDs and stuff. Like inflation's going up, but yet the earning potential is way down, and your money's worth half of what it was just, bless you, just a couple years ago. So yeah, I'm having to like kind of reevaluate what I'm gonna do with, and I don't know. I thought after walking all this time I might figure it out, but I still haven't. Guiding, I played around a little bit with a guided trip. Did a guided trip on the AT once a couple of years ago. I was the only guide, so we had some issues with like people going different like speeds and stuff. So
You'd be an awesome guide for like Skirka's company, or I know there's a million guiding services.
Yeah, I know. Would definitely be interested in that. I actually just applied for one of his trips because he had some last minute cancellations. Just kind of curious, like, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to like look into whether I can fund that or not, because it is a pretty substantial amount, which I could apply towards months of hiking as opposed to 10 days or 11 days of hiking.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had a couple of vacancies on the upcoming Brooks Range. Sure. And I just was kind of interested. I've always wanted to go to Alaska. I've been to Alaska actually, but I've wanted to hike there. So I thought maybe this would be fun to do. I don't know, but the planning involved with that seems kind of insurmountable at this point. And the notion of bears being, I don't know, wouldn't want to, like going through the desert. Okay, burros. Not the same as a grizzly bear. I can handle the burros. There wasn't a single thing out there on the desert trail that I really feared in terms of animals, So, yeah. But Alaska's like seems like a whole nother story there. Because I was on the GDT last summer, and that I was in a trail family for that one, because we all did our permits together, and it was nice having the comfort of a group of people and we didn't have any problems with grizzlies, but they were definitely around. And so I think, doing a trip like that, I would want to be with some other people.
Yeah. Did you see grizzlies or signs of grizzlies?
Signs, and then there was a grizzly battling with a black bear right below our campsite one night this was in Waterton National Park. I didn't see it, but my friend has the video of it. It's pretty amazing. The black bear was the size of the grizzly, and they were fighting.
Wow.
And
surprised
then
the black bear could keep up.
The black bear was chasing the grizzly down the hill. It was crazy. And then
bears are wild.
Yeah, we got pretty used to it. I mean, like at first, like the very first day on the GDT, we saw a bear in Waterton right in the middle of the town. It was a black bear. And on the PNT was the most I ever the most bears I ever saw was like 13 during that hike. A lot of black bears on that trip. But I'm not really afraid of the black bears. And I just haven't had any close encounters with grizzlies yet. I think I saw one from afar one of the days on the GDT, and we couldn't quite tell what it was because it was so far away. It was a big brown animal that was either a grizzly or an elk. It was that big. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They definitely make me a little uncomfortable. And I carried bear spray on the GDT for sure, and on the PNT, at least for half of it.
Yeah. Okay. Bent Mackay Foothills Trail, GDT, which you just mentioned, including
last year was busy.
Yeah. So GDT, Wind River High Route, Sawtooth, plus you went to Highline.
Yeah. Teton Crest Trail. So basically, we got booted off the GDT because of the fires last year. So we did half of the GDT. And then I pivoted. I had my backpacking and gear and food, and I was like, I'm not giving up yet. What am I going to just go back to Florida? So me and this other guy took like a series of hitches and Trail Angel rides all the way back down to we stopped in East Glacier, and then we just kept going all the way to Yellowstone, and then we hitched through there and jumped on the Teton Crest Trail, and then just started kind of working our way south. So I was basically doing a bunch of the alternates that I didn't do on the CDT when I was through hiking it. So went through Tetons, the Gravants, then got to the Winds and we did the high route in kind of pieces because like we got closed out by the weather for a couple days, and then went back to Pinedale? Is that the name of the town? And went back and then started from the south end and completed the rest of that route. As you know, it's hard to get the Wind River High Route is hard to do all in one stretch because either weather or injuries.
Right.
Yeah, that's a hard
It kicks
one.
People's asses pretty hard. Kicks hours, yeah.
Yeah, and we did the Allen Dixon route. We didn't even try because we were on the western side mostly. So we started in like Green River, and then we started at Big Sandy. And the Skarka route looks really hard. Like
it is, or the half of it that I saw was, yeah.
Like starting out near Lander and then that northern half where you're going through all the glaciers, that looks tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the main event, maybe not.
Yeah.
We'll let you tell us the Desert Winter Thru-Hike from Tucson to San Diego. Where did the inspiration for this one come from?
So it's a Brett Tucker route, and I've done 2 of those. And Brett, I meant to contact him before this to be like, is there anything I can or can't say about this? It's kind of a funny one that he's trying to keep a little bit under wraps because he's worried about, rightfully so, he's worried about some of the details we can get into, but mostly the water sources. So his requirement to give you the deets on this is that you've hiked one of his other routes that's over 500 miles. And Brett's also come up with like the Northern New Mexico Loop, which I hope to do maybe this year, and also the lowest to highest route, which is the cool one that goes from Badwater, like, what is it called? Death Valley, all the way to Whitney. Yeah. So I haven't done that one either, but I'd done the other 2. So I met and he had kind of been sending the info to some of the people that he'd known for a bit and had done his other routes as kind of like beta testers. So of course Buck 30 has done it twice already. And he did it the opposite direction from Joshua Tree. So officially it goes from Saguaro National Park west to Joshua Tree. And because it fills in this gap that basically goes from the Arizona, it's like with, Saguaro's right near where the Arizona Trail goes through. And then when you finish in Joshua Tree, you're just a few leaps from Mission Creek and the PCT. So this also serves as a connector for anybody wanting to do the entire Great Western Loop, which is Skurka's famous hike. And when I was like thinking about this desert hike when Brett first published it, and it was Buck30 that actually gave me the idea, is that you could, if you've done all these other hikes, you're on your way to have done the Great Western Loop as a series of section hikes. So thought that would be a fun little thing to add to the list. Andrew Skirka did a different route, I guess, from like the Grand Canyon all the way back to the PCT. So this is a variation of that. Because there's really not any one way to go through the desert. Brett made his route to basically hit as many wilderness areas as possible, and he did an amazing job at that. So starting in a national park and also finishing in a national park too. So that's cool, cool aspect. And so yeah, just to kind of complete that loop that I had yet to do, since I'd done all the other pieces already, and just having fun doing another one of his routes, and the challenge of it, because this was the first route I did entirely solo, and I wanted to kind of prove to myself that I could do that. And it seemed, from what Buck30 said, it wasn't as bad as the Hayduke in terms of like the scrambling, and I thought that the navigation was pretty straightforward as well, so I didn't really have too many concerns about that. But what specifics can I tell?
For navigation, trail versus route.
So if you've ever done the PCT recently and gone up Mission Creek, and you probably haven't done it since the flood, I did it 2017. The trail still existed on. And now it's been completely washed out. So you're walking up a wash most of the way, specifically Mission Creek wash. I tried to put things into perspective, and talking to the PCT hikers, it's like, Mission Creek, where you spent all day walking in the sand and the rocks, that was the Desert Winter Thru-Hike. Like, it's a lot of rocks and sand. Walking up a wash typically, and getting to the end of that wash where it kind of breaks into just the steep mountainside that you got to go up and over a little pass, and go over that pass, come back down, weaving amongst all the cactuses and whatnot and rocks, and then jumping back into a wash and following that all the way down to where it like meets an old road, or old mining road generally. Following that for a little ways. Sometimes you're going straight across the barren desert, like it's pretty hard packed. There's a thing called desert pavement even in some of these sections, that it feels like you're almost walking on a road where you're just walking cross country through it, but it's like so compacted from the wind, and there's like little flat stones, and it's actually pretty pleasant and easy walking. And then it's just kind of a repeating themes of that.
Is walking through washes continually fun?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're beautiful, and like they take you up into these amazing, with the mountains, sometimes canyons actually. Coming straight out of Parker, Arizona, you cross the Colorado River, and you're into the Whipple Mountains, and there's this amazing canyon. It's very Hayduke-like, that you're walking up this giant wash, but that's just surrounded on all sides by sheer rock. And that wash, or that canyon, had a little bit of scrambling, so that was also very Hayduke reminiscent. And but a lot of times the washes were a little bit wider and more mellow. But yeah, it's a lot of the Mission Creek. So if you didn't like that on the PCT, you won't like the desert hike. But I didn't mind the rocks. It's fun to read Buck30's journal on this one, because he quote unquote complains about the rocks a lot. But Arizona is just notoriously, even the Arizona Trail is a very rocky trail. It's not like the rocks in Pennsylvania on the AT, it's just a little. And yeah, if you've done the Hayduke or Arizona Trail, you kind of understand already that. But it was good that I wore different footwear for the first time. I broke from wearing Ultras from the very first time after all these miles, and used Topos, and I was really happy with them.
Which model?
They were the Ultra Venture Pros, which is the older model, which has been replaced by the Traverse, I believe. So I'm wearing a pair right now, but this one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, these are not the ones I wore on that hike, but I bought them for the PCT. But yeah, they were pretty durable, like really durable. The soles were completely worn out by the end because of all the rocks. But I didn't get any like cactus spines through the soles, which was one of my concerns at the beginning. And I didn't have any breaks or punctures in the upper, so I was like really impressed with those shoes. Yeah. And I probably won't go back to ultras again.
Yeah. So for someone who's done so much backpacking in ultras and has made the change, is the durability just the biggest difference, or are there other?
Yeah, well, I believe these have a rock plate, so that was pretty useful.
Some of them, some of the models do.
Yeah, I think that's really key if you're doing any of these off-trail routes and the rocks like in the desert. So yeah, and to help with cactus spines and the like too. Yeah, I think you'd want to have a rock plate. Just pretty beefier shoes. Like I was wearing the most minimalist of the ultras, the Superiors, which not many people wear at all, which I was fine with, but you can feel every little pebble with those things. Yeah. So and I wore those on the Hayduke and I was okay, but no, I probably won't go back to those. Yeah.
So you did this during the winter. What exactly was your timeline?
I started July 27th, and then I finished around March 13th or something.
And what's the distance?
Wait, you said July 27th?
Did I say January?
January.
Winter, Desert Winter Hike. Yeah, sorry. I'm like in the mode of like my southbound hikes. Is when I usually start. And January 27th.
The distance on this one?
It was like 800 miles roughly. I think since I added the two pieces to connect, so I actually started on the east side of Tucson in Sabino Canyon. I hiked up that canyon, connected to the Arizona Trail, and then came down through Romero Pass and then hiked. This is the route Brett came up with, which was from Romero Pass all the way down through the valley of Tucson, along the bike path. That's one of the bike paths there, and then connecting to Saguaro National Park. And at the end, I added another 50 or 60 miles to get from the Joshua Tree to Mission Creek. So I walked all the way across Joshua Tree, down a canyon into a town called Desert Hot Springs, and then through that town and all the way over to where the Mission Creek trailhead starts, and then connected to the PCT and got off at Whitewater Preserve. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the weather like?
It was unseasonably hot in February.
I imagine that's a good problem as opposed to the inverse, maybe?
Yeah, you can experience all of it, of course, in the desert, and notoriously often will. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be as hot as it was. One of Buck 30's pieces of advice was not to bother with an umbrella. He hiked it twice. That was his experience. It was either too windy and it just wasn't hot enough for him to think that it was a necessary piece of equipment. I needed my umbrella for about 3 weeks straight. I had it up all day long. I would have not made it without the umbrella. I'm certain of that. It was getting up to around 90 degrees all the way through Arizona. So the sun beating down on my head constantly every day, it would have been too much. And the umbrella saves me from having to carry as much water because I don't sweat as much. I can like take off all my sun gear and just have the umbrella up, and that way I'm not losing as much water to sweat. So it's actually a practical consideration. And yeah, not having the sun beat down directly on my head was the key thing.
What about the weather overnight? Did it get pretty low in the temps?
I started off in rain and snow in Tucson, which rain and snow snowed in like Mount Lemmon. And the second day I kind of broke up the hike at the beginning so that I could hike across the valley during the bad weather. And then I hiked up to Romero Pass the next day, and I was following mountain lion tracks in the fresh snow. So that was, and then right after that, this heat wave hit, and like, yeah, it got to be like, I brought way too much. I brought an extra quilt to use as a top quilt, and I ended up sending that back like within the first week because it was too hot. And I had a 20-degree bag thinking I was probably going to freeze my butt off, but I didn't really have any nights that were below 30, luckily. But once I got into the Mojave Desert, it was a completely different experience. I started getting some winter storms through March, and the day after I finished, and when I got to Desert Hot Springs, it snowed in the Mojave. So I got lucky that I didn't have to deal with that. But very windy and sometimes pretty frigid in the Mojave. So it's every condition that you can get, you'll almost have in the desert.
Yeah. So with all your backpacking across a very wide array of terrain, what's a piece of gear or maybe a couple pieces of gear that you feel very strongly about that maybe isn't like conventional wisdom in the world of backpacking?
I love my umbrella. I've brought it on every hike.
Do you hold it or affix it to your shoulder
Yeah,
strap?
I have it fixed. In the rain, it's fine, just fixed to the backpack. I have a whole little method for that I've been tinkering with.
Waymark gear was your pack?
This one I used the Hyperlite. I mostly stuck with the Hyperlite pack. I like my Catabatic Alsec, but it's getting, is that how you say it? I don't know. It's the 22 degree. I need a new one because I've used that one on like so many through hikes, and this one included, and it's just doesn't have the loft, even though I've washed it 3 or 4 times. But it's been on like probably 8, starting with the Colorado Trail, 2017. So
that's impressive.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to have to hit up the Black Friday special on that or something and get a new one. But I don't know what to do. The old one is the problem. But I love my quilt. And I have one of their 30-degree quilts that I've used on the AT. And I even used that on the GDT, and it was fine. I like my little camp shoes that I've carried on most every trail. They're like these little Vivo barefoot ultra things. They don't even make them anymore. I have to find them on eBay. But yeah, I got a lot of little luxury items that I still carry a stove, the little BRS 3000, do cooked meals. So yeah, I'm usually around 11 pounds base weight, I guess.
Pillow? Yeah.
I like the little Nemo one. It's pretty nice. It has like that, it has like a sleeve that goes in, and it's really comfortable.
I feel like the pillow's made a renaissance. Most of the people we interview of late are pro pillow.
I haven't done another hike since the PNT, but I am considering a pillow for whatever's next.
You've never had a pillow?
No, I just I'm usually so tired that I just fall asleep, and usually it's more my legs that feel restless and my knees get really cold. I don't know why, but my knees get really cold. So my head's usually the last thing I think about. I'll put it on the backpack, or I'll put it on my food bag, or it depends on where I am, but I usually just put it on my trash bag before.
I use my backpack I use a women's, they don't even make the women's thermarest anymore, X-Lite, apparently, I heard. But I have like the Neo Air X-Lite women's, so it's a little bit shorter, and then
higher R value, right?
Yeah, it was, but so the reason, and for being a little shorter, then I can put like my backpack where my head goes, and then the pillow on top of the backpack, and it makes it a pretty nice little stack.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about finding maybe an inflatable sleeping pad that I don't roll off, because I'm a Z-Lite girl. I rotisserie chicken throughout the night, and I wake up really cold because my sleeping pad's next to me if it's inflatable. So nice foam, can't move.
Yeah, I've never even tried a foam. I was just reading through the Backpacking Light updated one that they just published like 2 days ago about pads and what all the options are right now on the market. And I've been using the Thermarest X-Lite since like 2012. So I've not tried.
The same pad?
I have that same pad.
That's crazy.
I have that same pad. It's starting to delaminate a little bit, and but it has never gotten a hole.
That is
Wow.
amazing.
It's like one of the OG ones because it's like see-through. You can actually like, it's not, the fabric's opaque. So it's like, and I tried recently to file a claim because it has a bulge.
I've only gotten
because it has a bulge.
14,000 miles out of this.
No, I haven't used that one on all of my through hikes. I've been using the women's one, and I've gone through 2 women. One of the women's ones I had started like has a slow leak as they get, and then I can't find it, so that's kind of just like a backup one. And then the newer one I had was a replacement for. I tried the Uber Light, and just that one, the baffles. I had 2 delaminate on me, and I just was like fed up with that.
Do they still make that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was not. Somebody you had on one of your podcasts was swearing by it, and I don't remember who. But
That one has been very polarizing.
and I was just like,
yeah.
I've never gotten a hole, and I'm kind of like a princess in the pea with my tent, and I have to like clear the ground like of any kind of obstruction. Like,
That's good.
And I thought that was going to be the biggest challenge on the Desert Winter Thru-Hike was, I know Buck 30 had like struggled with his keeping the holes at bay. I mean, he was patching holes like every night on his thermarest, and I thought, oh my God, this is a bad idea to bring an inflatable pad where there's cactus and nothing else. But no, I never got a hole.
Yeah.
I was very proud of that. I also, I'll give a little plug because I just got some nice customer service. The little Pad Pal, which is the little pump inflator. And have you seen this thing?
No.
It's
Pad
like
Pal?
Pad Pal. He's going to love this.
I see this on Garage Gun Gear.
Yeah, it's on Garage Gun Gear. I just left a review. I misspelled my name. Twiff. I'm Twiff. Couldn't even get that right, but I tried to leave it. It's a great little thing. 9 grams. It's like nothing. And you plug it into your battery. That's because it doesn't have a battery. You just plug it in, and it just inflates my pad like in a minute.
And this works with the thermarest? Yep.
He's got adapters for all of the
Wow.
main pads that come with it.
This is cool.
That's nice.
The only problem I had with it was when the adapter he had sent me, I guess he was saying that he 3D prints them, and then like he had a bad batch or something, so those were like developing little cracks. But that was what was nice. I was on the PCT, and he overnighted me one to Wrightwood, a new adapter, and took care of the problem like right away. So I wanted to give him a shout out for great customer service and a great little product. And I've never carried one of those pumps before, but because it works right off of your battery pack and your phone. You can just plug it right into your phone.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's cool.
The phone's got enough juice to power it.
Wow.
And I saw that somebody said that was the advantage. He's got a competitor on Garage Gun Gear. I don't remember the name of it, but somebody said the advantage of that one was that it will run off of a phone, but his will too. So
Yeah. All right.
he makes them in his little container out in the desert somewhere in Southern California.
That's
I probably
cool.
hiked past it.
I think we'll put a bow on it with this one. This is the Stay Salty question presented by Element. Use our URL drinklmnt.com/trek. What is your hottest take in the world of backpacking or outdoors at large? We started off with the Elon acronym.
Oh gosh, that whole. I'm surprised you went with that. Trying to not be too political, but yeah. No, biggest. Well, yeah. Then I'll finish with like. Hopefully we can all rally together to protect our public lands and have these kind of opportunities to just disappear out in the desert as I did for 2 months. I can't describe what it's like to be all by yourself in the middle of nowhere, not being able to see anybody else and see any roads or hear any. The silence out there was like nothing I've ever experienced. And it's hard to put into words the value of having places like that. But hopefully we can continue to have our wilderness and public lands preserved. I don't know what it's going to take to reverse what's already been done, but there are lands. They belong to the people. They don't belong to corporations. And I don't know, like, it just makes me so angry, like what's happening, selling things off to the highest bidder. But yeah, support the people that work for the BLM and Forest Service and Park Service as much as you can. And for instance, I just donated money to a project that was being supported by BLM to do some maintenance and on trails, because the burros aren't going to cut it. So it was an AmeriCorps group, and they just got their funding cut. And these are, kids that are getting college credits for this and had already made their entire plans for the summer around this project. And so that was a GoFundMe. Maybe you can include it in the show notes if they still have it. I could send you the link, but just trying to help out with projects like that. I do trail work for the Florida Trail when I can, because they mostly do their trail maintenance in the winter. So I like to get out and support the trails that way, give back. So I really think thru-hikers are going to have to step up and start filling in where there aren't Forest Service people to do the trail maintenance. Like, it's all going to be volunteers. So try to help out with that if you can. And that makes you feel really good about yourself as well. And it's fun to do trail maintenance. So wherever you live, there's probably a place you could help with trail maintenance. Unfortunately, a lot of the trail maintenance coincides with the thru-hiking season out west. But yeah, maybe take a season off just to help with trail maintenance. I know the Colorado Trail has like awesome schedules that people can get involved with around here. And I've thought about like coming out to Colorado and just spending a summer helping with that. Hopefully one of these days. Yeah.
Well, Twig, you've covered a lot of ground, both on this podcast and in life. You're a very, very interesting person, and we're incredibly grateful for you joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you.
And actually, obviously, I mentioned the website. Is there anywhere else that people should go to keep up with you?
My Instagram handle is also Twig Adventures. So same as the website.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.